Well, Happy New Year, everybody, and thank you so much for joining this webinar podcast. We like to start these out by one, thanking Alexis for two things: her time that she's going to spend with us today, and her knowledge. Again, these are I think, some of the most important things that any one individual can share with a group or any other. So we are so thankful for her time and her knowledge that she's going to share today. And so what Alexis is she's an expert in ag strategy, and she has also started to become, and she is the director of the farming operations at Momentis Family Office. She brings over 2 decades of leadership at the intersection of agriculture and land management and rural policy. She has work experience of collaboration with multi-generational farms and families, uh, programs, to include your nationwide, ag programs with landowners, navigating complex legal, financial, and conservation decisions on those. She has worked with and worked for the Iowa State Extension as a specialist, advising landowners across the country on farmland transition, estate planning, sustainability, risk management, federal ag policy. She has worked in particular with expertise with women landowners, which is amazing, and helping them gain clarity and confidence they need to steward their land and shape their family's legacy. We just recently attended the Iowa Women's Leadership Conference in Ames here last month, which was awesome. We got to connect. Alexis and I did. She's a trusted voice, a strategic voice who can distill complex legal, economic, and policy issues. She has a background in psychology, business, and military intelligence. Now, see, I didn't know that about you, Alexis, and I'm going to
Yeah.
ask you about that one, so you better hang on.
All right, but
Um,
some
uh,
of it's classified.
I don't want to get myself or you or anybody on this webinar in trouble for sure. But we've gotten to know each other pretty well over the last few months, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Um, so with that, she brings a structure and empathy to every project, which I agree. She's just been fantastic. When I see an idea about sustainability, I'm always like texting it to Alexis, like, "Hey, have you looked at this thought? I thought about this for the Momentous Family Office," and we have I think, a great relationship there. She's very future focused, and she's been deeply rooted in rural America and ag. And so, with that, Alexis, thank you so much for joining us today. And so, um, let's just start there. Let's just start, as a kind of a teaser. What did you do? What was your military background, and how did you come into the intelligence world? I think that's a nice way to kick
That's
this
that's a
off.
great way to get started. We'll start at
Yeah,
the
I think
beginning.
so. It's kind of juicy.
This is actually because I think when I was younger, I had some fear that I wasn't good enough. And then listening to you read all that about me and talk about me, I'm like, oh, I am pretty amazing. Uh, but um, when it was time to graduate high school, there were a couple of things I didn't want to do. I didn't want to go to Iowa State University because that's what my parents expected me to do. And I didn't want to work at Iowa State Extension, which is where my parents worked. Ironically, I ended up at Iowa State Extension, and it was some of the best years of my life. But I had a friend who joined the military, and she was learning foreign language there, and I really wanted to learn foreign languages. I studied Spanish and French in um, high school, and I thought I was pretty good at it. So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm just going to join the army. And oh my gosh, my mom was mad. But it was a great experience. I got to learn Arabic, and there were two types of jobs available at that time that had foreign language learning, and one involved speaking and talking to people, and that was interrogator. And if you'd known me in high school, you would never have thought I'd be an interrogator. But it turns out I was actually pretty good at it because I'm good at having conversations. And that's really what interrogation into being, is just conversations with people to get information and sharing information back and forth between people in the other countries that we were working in and getting information from them and keeping the troops safe. Um, so I had the opportunity to work in an embassy in Kuwait, and I went over to Kuwait twice and worked in that capacity in counterintelligence. And I was there during 9/11.
Oh,
And
wow.
so was the senior Arabic speaking person in our office, and I wasn't that senior. I was a sergeant. But, we're scrambling to figure out what was going on, what happened, were there more attacks, how do we stop them, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
and keeping the troops safe. But one of the things that we don't think about in the military as keeping the troops safe is food safety and food security. And that was really an important aspect of my job, was to make sure that the food that was supplied to the troops was safe from, not just terrorist type things, but foodborne pathogens and that sort of thing. So I had the opportunity to work with Kuwaiti farmers, and when you think about Kuwait or Saudi Arabia, Iraq, you don't really think about farming. You think desert.
Right.
They
Right.
actually have a lot of agriculture in that area, a lot of dairy, herding, camels, sheep, cattle, dates. And at one time, Saudi Arabia's agriculture actually was really thriving and flourishing when they still had access to water. So that's my intersection of military intelligence and strategy into agriculture.
Wow. Well, that is extremely interesting. Yeah, food security, no one really probably even had probably didn't even hit radar at that time. And that, that's interesting that you bring that up. Because that certainly could have a significant impact, not only here in the United States, but globally as well. So, that's very interesting. So you did that, and then you said, hey, some of the best times of your career were with the ag extension office, with helping in that farm management field, right? That's how you and I met. We had a farm manager call, and we were talking about Oaken and its technology and how there's not only a grower platform but a farm manager platform to help with leasing and the land management processes. But so you said it was one of the best times of your life. Why was working at the extension one of the best times of your career? And you've got an extensive background here, 2 decades worth. Why was that? Why was that? What made that so rewarding for you?
I love helping people. And that's what extension does. They help people, but we don't tell them what to do. We
Yeah,
give them the tools to figure out for themselves. Here are the options, here are the studies. Now you make this informed decision for yourself, because I don't want to tell somebody what to do. I
right.
want to lead them into opportunities that would help them. And I love public speaking. I know people say that's like one of their biggest fears is public speaking, but that really makes my heart sing. So the opportunity to get up in front of a crowd or on a stage and talk to people about something that I'm passionate about, which is agriculture and
Yep.
helping farmers make money, Iowa State gave me that opportunity every day. So it was
That's
great.
awesome. That's awesome. Now, how long did you do that for?
I was with Iowa State for 5 years, and
Five
farm
years.
management for 4.
Or farm management for 4. And in that, excuse me, you said one of your biggest call outs was helping women, right, in
Mhm.
agriculture. And so having learned from you and what I learned at the women's ag conference, and really what we see in Oaken when we walk into a grower's operation and their family farm, we see that the women are the CEOs, the CFOs, the HR leads. They're doing everything, and when they see, what we do here at Oaken, that certainly helps them build in a lot of efficiency so that they can do the other things that are also needed, not only on their farms, but with their families. Um, what were some of the, challenges that you saw, maybe even broader across, the farms that you worked with? It was mainly in Iowa, right? You had a district in Iowa, right? Yeah. So what were some of the like challenges and then solutions that you helped them with?
I think the biggest challenge that women landowners or women farmers, but more the landowners have, is
Right.
that they don't feel that they have a seat at the table. They don't feel like they have the knowledge and the background to have the conversation. So at Iowa State, we did something called Annie's Project, which is where we teach the women about farm business management. We give them the tools so they feel like they can sit down at that table with the men and
Yep.
have a conversation. And it's really about confidence. I did a lot of work with land leasing with landowners, and the women sometimes they felt like they didn't have the power to request changes to the lease that they thought they needed. They wouldn't ask for more rent. And I'm not talking about trying to get the highest rent in the county. I'm just talking about these women didn't feel comfortable even asking for a, a fair average rent. I don't want to ask too much. Oh, and so I would
Right.
be able to give them those tools and show them, well, this is what other people are doing, but giving them the confidence. I'm like, if Alexis can tell you that this is what we're going to do with the lease, then Mary Jane, you can stand up there and say that same thing. And I got to work with one lady. You saw her at that leadership conference, Loretta,
Yeah.
Loretta
Yep.
Reimers.
Yep.
She's 89,
Yeah.
and she owns quite a bit of farmland. And that woman just stands up. She'll even tell you, I just stand up and I say, no, you're not
Yep.
going to treat me like that.
Yep.
But sometimes you just need some confidence that you know what you're talking about. And so that was something that I could do at Iowa State, was give them confidence.
Huh. That's amazing. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's I think there's that confidence, that knowledge where you can look across broadly to see kind of, the work that Iowa State does to, understand what rents are, the different rents are, and those sort of things as well gives them a lot of information, and you being able to kind of help shepherd that. There was a saying once when a long time ago, and it's been something that I think what you to what you were saying about what gives you joy when you talk to people is rather than catching all the fish and feeding the people, you're teaching them how to fish, right? And you're
Mhm.
teaching them how to be and grow their business and grow their farmland and continue it for the next generation. So I think that's amazing that you're helping with that. Yeah, she was phenomenal at the well, all of them were at the conference, and yeah, just a little plug for that. If you're haven't attended that and you would like to reach out to Alexis, because I think you're on the board, right? Or you're part
I
of the
am. Yep.
executive team. So it's just a fantastic one, and one of the best conferences that I've been to, and it's right there in Ames, and it's a great venue, and there's lots of networking that goes on, and just a phenomenal meeting. One of the most educational of those breakout sessions that they had around farm management and succession planning and all those things were just great meeting, great, ability to learn and great topics and great speakers. So all right. So okay, so you went from Iowa State, and I know you had a little bit of a transition there with a corporate entity, and then you said, I'm going to do what? I'm going to start my own what?
Well, I thought I would. I was in that transition where I had worked for a co-op real briefly, and the co-op had some leadership changes, and that didn't work out. So it was, I'm going to do something because I need income and a job. And I thought maybe that was starting my own farm management company, but I put a kind of a little blurb on LinkedIn. Um, just like, okay, I'm open for work. Here's what I've done. Here's what I want to do. And one of the people on LinkedIn happened to know about Momentis Family Office looking for a leader in sustainability and regenerative ag leader, and someone to manage their land. So they've got over 12,000 acres that are tillable. And Momentis Family Office supports Omani and Jeannie Carson. They're from Nebraska. It
Okay.
supports their investments and their just their whole life. And these two people are absolutely phenomenal. Omani originally was Ron Carson. If that name doesn't ring a bell, he just recently changed his name to Omani. But in the 80s, his dad pulled him aside and said, "I'm sorry, son, but you're not going to be able to come home to the farm." And I think a lot of families have that
Right.
story.
Right.
Um, and Omani was a hard worker. He started his own wealth management group, and was able to then buy family land and buy a lot of farmland in just a small area, 2 counties in northeast Nebraska. But he's looking at how the how agriculture could support people, looking at like the Maha movement, regenerative agriculture, that sort of thing. He was looking for somebody who could help his 12 tenants make that transition from conventional agriculture to regenerative agriculture. And, originally it was organic. Let's make everything organic. Well, when you look at let's make everything organic, in that part of Nebraska, it's right there on the Missouri River. There's this land called Gumbo, and it is the heaviest, wettest clay you've ever seen. And you can't get in to work it. And what do you do with organic for weed control? Is usually some sort of tillage. You can't even till this half the time. And so what I'm doing with Momentis, and I'm so excited about this, is to help our growers transition all of our acres into some sort of regenerative practice. So some of that's going to be cover crops, some strip till, no till, even looking at things like biochar, um, restoring things to pasture. We're going to bring in bison, which I'm excited about, and I'm a little bit afraid because I've been to Yellowstone. I've been very close to those, and I raised cattle. I had a cattle feedlot for a number of years, and so I do have a healthy fear of bovine animals, and bison are a little bit bigger. Um,
Right.
but we're doing the bison is more of a restoring the prairie, restoring the ground because their hooves tear up the ground, and the manure fertilizes that sort of
Right.
thing. Not looking at selling the bison for meat, but also supporting the indigenous population that we have in that area through that as well. So
Interesting.
ceremonies, that sort of thing.
So I'm gonna just a couple. If anybody has a question about anything we've covered thus far with Alexis, please ask in the chat. Just go ahead and type it in the chat. There should be a button down at the bottom that says chat. You can just go there and ask a question, and I'll monitor that right now. And then um, one thing that I want to kind of parse out here with you is so. Okay, you found out, or you established this relationship with Momentis Family, right? And you and I have had lots of really good conversations about that. But can you kind of elaborate on what you saw, when we did the webinar with Oaken, and then what you did, and you saw how that could benefit you to kind of give you, I
Mhm.
mean, let's be honest. I mean, it kind of using the technology, which it's unique to industry, coming out of Purdue University, the technology is very unique in the way it helps with land management and lease management and expenses and payments and relationships and all those aspects. Tell me how you use that, if you don't mind, to not to say, well, here's this technology that can be applied, which with someone to the owners of Momentis, being that they didn't get the farm, but boy, they came back and bought the farm, and they're pretty aggressive in what their approaches are. Kind of talk about what you saw from a technology and how you leveraged Oaken's technology maybe to help you with that process.
Absolutely. I think I saw Oaken even while I was still at Iowa State, and heard about it.
Uh,
And I remember looking at that and saying, well, this is going to do everything I want it to do. It's going to organize my leases. It's all right there on a dashboard. I, I can see everything I need to see. I can see all the documents. Everything's right there. And I'm like, this technology is going to change the way farm management is done. And I think I asked you, I'm like, who else is there other options? What else is out there like this? And you can You can do an Excel spreadsheet.
Right.
You can make an access database, right? But then I
Right.
don't want to spend all day doing that. And it doesn't do everything that Oaken does. That doesn't have that dashboard that my landowner can go and look at. It doesn't sort things. I can't store all of my files. Oaken sends me reminders. Right now, I think I have 85 reminders that my bonus rents are coming due. So that's more reminders than I want. Um, but the thing with Momentis Family Office, it's over 12,000 acres. It's 12 growers that we're working with. It's I think we're at 60 some individual fields, individual leases.
Yep.
No one can keep track of that in and all of that and know everything I needed some way to keep track of that. And so that was one of the things when I'm talking to them is that we have this farm management software that we can keep track of what's going on and not let things slip by, because the other option really is, if I didn't have Oaken, I need a couple of assistants.
Right.
So I'm saving my company money by having Oaken, because really it is my personal assistant there that's giving me the reminders, that's organizing things. And in it took a while to get set up because we had a lot to put in there. You guys
Yep.
were great, really helpful with that. And now that I've got it working the way I want and everything's working, it's just so much easier to keep track of things, because I could never keep track of that much information on my own without Oaken.
Right. Right.
And being able to tell them that and show them that, and being able to support the growers too, because the really neat thing I like about Oaken is if I have a phone call or a text message or some sort of conversation, I go and put that information right into Oaken and it saves that. So there's kind of that record.
Yep.
And then if I'm going to go meet with them, I'm going back and reviewing that, because again, that's 12 different
Yep.
growers that I'm working with, a lot of different leases. I don't want to go in there, talk about the wrong farm and sound stupid in front of them,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
So
for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Guess what?
what?
And I don't think we've got you hooked up yet, but we've got the mobile app now.
I
So
know, yeah.
so now you'll be able to go out and take picture of those bison and then send it to the owners of Momentis, and they'll be like, "Oh, wow," or or whatever you wanted to do. Or the
I
garden. You didn't even talk about your vision for the garden.
Oh my gosh. The,
Come on, tell us about the vision.
Probably the
Tell us
hardest thing
about
that
the
I have
vision
to
for your
do.
garden. I love this. I love this story.
Okay, well, one thing that Omani wanted to do, and I think this is maybe what set me apart from all the other people that were talking to Momentus about this position. Um, Long time ago, I had a CSA, and I did the farmers market and that sort of thing. So I had that experience. Well, Omani wanted to be able to um, take this section of land. It's about 3.5 acres. Um, and he wanted that to be a food plot, and not just for himself, but for his extended family, for employees. They have a kind of a leadership development organization called OMIA. And the members of OMIA, he wanted to be able to feed them as well and have that. And then, even going further to the people in Takema, which is the town where most of his farming operations are,
Yep.
and then Carson Wealth in Omaha. So at some point, maybe we'll just feed all of Nebraska. I think it would be great if we could provide organic, sustainably grown, fresh fruits and vegetables. If we could do that into the school system, I think you and I talked about that a little
Yep.
bit.
Yep.
I don't know about every school system in America, but my children in particular, oh my gosh, if you look at what they're being fed, it's very little. If it's a fruit or vegetable, it's a nasty old apple uh, and some carrot sticks, right? Um, so being able to give them that fresh food that's organic, that's free of pesticides, to help to heal their bodies, because we heal the land, we heal the bodies, we heal the communities. I think we'd heal a lot of
Absolutely.
that
Yep. No, I agree with that for
the
sure. I
anger
mean,
that's in the schools,
yeah,
you
the
know?
freshness, the the reduction in pesticide usage, all that stuff is certainly all A plus stuff, if we're talking about getting it integrated into schools. And yeah, the vision of the ability to be able to do that, I think it's fantastic. I actually want, when you get a little more engaged in what you're doing, I would love to have a tour of the property and your vision and all that. I know we haven't talked about that, but I would. And for the record, another way that Alexis is using the technology, she's in Iowa and she's managing ground in Nebraska, which helps being able that this is a cloud-based platform to be able to take it into county offices and wherever she's at, and at that particular time, to have that information at her fingertips. And I do appreciate you sharing how you're leveraging and how you used Oaken to help you with that. I think that's just fantastic. And um, I always say, I think if the technology can do two things, you hit on it: saving money. It allowed you to separate yourself, which was fantastic for potential others. And then also just the amount of efficiencies that it builds in so that you can do other things, and you have a family and you're doing
Yeah.
all other things as well, and extremely busy creating gardens in her hometown. And this, my grandpa used to say, there's an old saying, grass didn't grow underneath his feet. Well, grass doesn't grow underneath your feet, I can tell. So we do have a question that came in. Could you share more about why sustainability is important to the Momentis office? That's one part. And then also the kind of challenges you are encountering implementing these.
Um, well, sustainability, I think it's important to all of us, but why it's really important to Momentous and especially to Omani, um, is because people in his family, people in his life have had some health issues. And we can really trace a lot of those health issues back to what we're putting in our body, right? Our body
Yep.
puts out what we put in. So if we're putting in water that isn't clean, if we're putting in food that isn't clean, if the air isn't clean, then what are we going to get inside our bodies? Disease, right?
Right.
And so Omani really wants to be a beacon to other people. So we don't just want to say, okay, we just put cover crops out there. We do want you to come out and look at what we're doing. We want to do it the right way so that you come out and say, oh wow, look, they did this on 12,000 acres. I can do it on my 40 acres or my 200 acres. What we don't want to do is do something where everybody drives by the farm and laughs because it's full of weeds or whatever. And
Right.
that is a challenge, but it's healing the land. Mental health is really, really important to Omani and to Momentis as well. And again, what you put in your body is what comes out. And so if you don't put good things into your body, your mental health is not good. And it's just making things better. We talk about climate change, global warming, whatever you want to call it. I was just thinking this morning, we don't have to call it those things because those things sometimes somebody might argue there's no global warming, it's cold, right? There's no climate change, whatever. How about human impact? The human impact on the environment. You cannot deny that we have an impact on the environment.
Right.
So if we could lessen that impact or work with the environment, bringing things back into a natural way, but at the same time, providing jobs and providing food for America. That's what's important to us. And the other part of that question, what are some challenges you've encountered in implementing this? Um, One of the big challenges is this soil called gumbo, this
Yeah.
heavy, wet, um,
Is it clay? A lot of clay.
it's clay. It was the bottom of the Missouri River, and then they
Yep.
rerouted the Missouri River about
Yep.
100 years ago, right?
Yep.
It floods. You can't work it half the time. It's cold. And, um, sometimes I do like to say there's just some land that maybe shouldn't be farmed. But
Right.
sometimes, who do I tell? Okay, well, you're not going to farm this anymore. I'm going to take away your job, or this was family land. I don't want to tell that to the grower. I don't want to tell that to Omani if that was his family land. Well, we shouldn't be farming it anyway. Let's find a way that we could make this land still in agriculture, still a profitable way of doing things. But for that gumbo soil, that means that's probably a 5 to 10 year transition of
Yep.
some really elaborate cover crop and crop rotation and that sort of thing. May or may not achieve that. And I also told that to Omani. I said, we have some lofty goals to have all of this land into sustainable practices and to have all of Nebraska is sustainable and eventually all of the United States sustainable. You're not going to live to see that.
Right.
But what can we do in 100 years? It could be pretty amazing. Other challenges have been, it's not free. If I want to do cover crops or no-till, there's either a cost to the seed, might have yield loss as well. And supporting the producers if they're going to have yield loss or if there's an extra cost to whatever they're implementing, that has been challenging because, well, there's a lot of cost shares that you can see. The NRCS has cost shares. There's Soil and Water Outcomes Funds, Practical Farmers of Iowa, carbon markets. They don't always cover the cost.
Yeah.
The loopholes and the things that you have to jump through to actually be able to do those doesn't always work out. And sometimes the funding that you think you have on August 15th is gone on August 16th
Yeah.
because of government policy. So that's really been a hard part because I've told my farmers, I want you to make money. I need the farmers, right? We need
Sure.
farmers in rural America because if they leave, we don't have these small towns anymore. If all
Right.
of our farms were 50,000 acres each, one guy doing that, um, we're going to lose rural America. So supporting them, finding the cost shares, but also doing the sustainable practices, that's really the hardest one. I thought the hardest thing would be talking the farmers into doing it. Oh, I don't want to do all that kooky, whatever.
Right.
Right. But I've not found that at all, even with the ones who said, well, it doesn't make financial sense, but they do want to help the environment. I
Yeah.
think if we had government policy, um, strong policy that wasn't changed every couple of days or every year, strong things in the Farm Bill that really supported regenerative practices in a way that made the farmer profitable. I think that then we would see massive implementation. But when we look at the farm economy right now, where pretty much no one is able to even sell their grain at cost of production
Yep.
in any area. I mean, I do corn and beans, but looking at wheat, I mean, rice, cotton, it's all the farm economy is bad, right? And
Yeah.
it'll get better. It's a cycle. We know that.
Right.
But support for these practices because otherwise the only way these practices happen is if you have somebody who is a true believer and has a lot of dusty money to throw at it.
Yeah. But it's encouraging to hear you say that, the growers that you're working with, the 12 growers that you're working with, they're not like poo-pooing it, right? They're like, no, we want to do this. We want to do this, but it needs to make financial sense. And you really hit on a lot of things there around ag policy, right? There needs to be more structure around that to be able to do these practices and keep farmers whole and and so yeah, that's really I think neat. So I'm going to ask you a kind of a loaded question here that you may not be able to answer,
Okay.
but what's your timeline
My timeline.
to
Um,
do all? You've got 12,000. You want to do it broadly, right? You want to show success and be able to say, hey, look, Nebraska, you want to be able to show Sherry Vinton, right? You want to say, hey, Sherry, come check this out and see what we're doing at Momentis Family Farms, right? She's the director of ag for the state of Nebraska. I hope I have that right. I
yes.
met her. I met her at the Nebraska Ag Show, and she's a fantastic person. So, um, so anyway, you want to be able to show her that. What's your timeline? What's your what do you what's
Okay, so I am one of these people who does things really, really fast. My husband always says that you don't just put the cart before the horse, you drag the cart and the horse. Um,
That's a good one. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that.
yeah. Look, if the horse and cart aren't going, I'm going. So come on. 2027. I want all of these practices implemented by 2027. So, ideally, we have put those cover crops on at the end of this growing season in 2026 on those acres. We started those transitions. And just to give you an idea, we're already halfway there. We did 2,000 acres of cover crops this past fall for 2025, and we have 4,000 acres that are in no-till. So we really are halfway there. It's not that hard. It's only 6,000 acres. It's really not that hard. Um, we just have to structure our leases in ways that support the farmer,
Right.
working with NRCS, working with other people with
Yep.
conservation minded people, and just start making those changes. And, it's that supporting the farmer through that, because they're not cheap, they're not free, there might be yield loss, and, every bushel counts. So,
Right.
and the other thing is, we have very little in CRP. So when I say sustainable practices, I do think CRP is a sustainable practice, but we only have a couple hundred acres in CRP. I'm talking about sustainable practices that we're still producing something off of the land, not just set
Yep.
aside, because we
Yep.
could just set aside everything into CRP if we,
Yeah.
if we really wanted to. And then there's my magic wand. I did it,
Right.
but we want to
There's a
do it in a
fit
way that
for
you
it.
can still
There's a
profit.
fit for it on the farm, right? But you
Mhm.
want it to be. It's not that broad fit. You're trying to create something that provides some level of profitability, which is
Right.
makes a lot of sense.
There is just, like I said, there's land that shouldn't be farmed and it
Yep.
should never be farmed. There's land that, we might look at and say, well, what could we do differently? Instead of corn and soybeans, could this be pasture? Um, could it be timber? Could it be pumpkins? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's an aggressive timeline. I was expecting it to be much longer to be, if you want
Yeah.
to. I mean, if I'm being completely honest with you, I was like, well, I was thinking maybe a much longer timeline, but I would, now I really want to be able to, now I will be able to see it. So I'm excited about that.
Shoot
Um,
for the stars and hit the moon, right? If
exactly,
and if
exactly.
we don't.
I'm a believer in that for sure, right? I'm a believer, go for the stars and you're going to land somewhere pretty high. Um, so, on the, on the, like what kind of, well, first let me just say to everyone that's called in, if you have a question, go ahead and enter it in the chat now for Alexis. What particular cover crop are you using? We got really kind of, my radar went up when you said, yeah, we're already putting on cover crop. Is it, what are you doing right now to from a cover crop standpoint?
So we did a mixture of oats and brassicas, so turnips and radishes,
Yep.
on most of our cover crops, because Omani is also looking at reducing chemical inputs. So they stopped using anhydrous on all of their acres a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And so the oats and the turnips, the nice thing about them is that they die off in the winter. Might need to get it a little colder.
Right. Yeah, right. It's
It's
not been
that
too
cold.
cold this winter
And
yet.
we really haven't had that much snow out there in Nebraska either. But the nice thing about those is, like, the turnips break up that heavy soil. They're not the turnips and radishes that we think of from the grocery store. They are big. They have long roots, so they get down in there and break that soil up.
Yep.
We did do a little bit of rye, and we did that on that gumbo soil because we we just can't get in there to till it. So we did the rye with the burn down on just a few hundred acres, um, just because that rye has a longer, deeper root. And the hope was that maybe it could put some organic matter into that gumbo soil. Maybe it could aerate it a little bit more. Um, and that's kind of an evolving thing. One thing we found when we did the oats and turnips was we didn't expect them to germinate because we put them on so late. And then it was warm and it rained, and those things took off like gangbusters. And I got a video from one of the producers because he's trying to combine beans and all he's combining is turnip tops. And thankfully he wasn't too angry because I thought, oh my gosh.
Right.
And it's a Saturday morning that I get this
Right.
look at all this green junk going through my combine. And I'm like, okay, well, it wasn't supposed to be like this. So it's a
Yeah.
learning experience too of like, well, I'm not going to do that again. Maybe I
Yeah.
won't plant them so early.
Well, you had, you just got lucky.
Yeah, I mean,
Everything
it
took off.
doesn't
So
rain in Nebraska,
and
and
no,
but
well, Eastern
this
Nebraska
year,
kind of, yeah. So it gets a little bit. So
this year
anyway,
it rained.
yeah. Well, we're right at that time. I think this conversation, I don't think this conversation has been fantastic. And if nobody else has a question for Alexis, Alexis, where can they follow you? Find more information about what you're doing? Is there some place that they can to get more information on you? Because you've said a lot of really interesting things, from the garden to bison to cover crops to, different initiatives to be able to do that. So okay, perfect. There's her.
There's my
Alexis
email.
at momentisfamilyoffice.com is where you can find more information out and reach out to Alexis if you have more questions.
Or you can follow me on LinkedIn. I did
Okay,
a little digital social media fast. I always do that in December. So I checked it today and I saw, oh my goodness, I have a lot of friend requests and stuff, but I do a lot on
awesome,
LinkedIn as well.
awesome.
So
Well, I'm thankful that you're my friend, and I'm thankful that you're our customer too. We're blessed to have you, and with that, I don't have anything else but to say from the end where I started. I thank you for your time and your knowledge that you shared with us today. Most valuable thing any one person can do for any other people, and I am truly thankful for that. So, with that, thanks for everybody joining. Hope you all hit those New Year's goals and resolutions, and stay with it. Be strong, and yeah, we'll catch you on our next webinar. So